Hi there, guys. I hope you're all doing well, and welcome back yet again to another episode on the Just Music Podcast. This is an episode that you're not going to want to miss because I had an awesome opportunity to sit down with Mr. Jeremy Duby. Mr. Duby is actually the band director for Olivet College's concert and marching band. This is an episode that you're going to really enjoy because Mr. Duby had a lot of great things to say and gave me all kinds of newfound perspectives about music and all the things that are going on currently in the world. So I hope you really enjoy, and Mr. Duby now joins in progress. All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode on the Just Music Podcast. Really looking forward to this episode because I have a very special guest on the program today, Mr. Jeremy Duby. Mr. Duby is actually the band director and organizer for Olivet College, and he also is the band director for Warren Concert Band. So I'm really excited to have him on the program, and I would like to welcome Mr. Duby.
Thanks, Justin. I'm really excited to be here today.
Yeah. This is really just a great opportunity to kind of, just throw all these questions at you because as a guitar player, I don't really have much experience or much knowledge of what the academic pursuit behind kind of organizing a band and having to be in charge of a whole large piece of musicians. So I'm really excited to get some information about that. But before we get into those more detailed questions, can you give us a little introduction or an origin story of yourself? Maybe, where you grew up and your upbringing and maybe your first encounters with music?
Sure. Yeah. I grew up in the Metro Detroit area of Michigan and had a really great background and was fortunate to have a school system that valued music and the arts. Mm-hmm. And I come from a quasi-musical family. My grandmother and her sisters were very musical singers and pianists and such, and my mom actually played the accordion. Oh. So that's how I kind of got involved. I was able to start playing on keyboards and kind of read a little bit before getting into formal music in the school. Mm-hmm. And then, fourth, fifth grade, your standard choir, recorder, all those fun things, and then band full-time in sixth grade. And so jumped on the clarinet and almost immediately switched to bassoon because my band director was a bassoonist, and Mac Danforth he studied at U of M and helped write all the books and worked on those things. So I was able to get a great background there. And through that time and into high school, we just had strong programming there and good leadership. My band director is now the director of bands at Wayne State University, and I followed him there through my undergrad.
Wow.
Professor Bianchi. So we were able to just keep that strong trend, and I saw the value of performance and being in various leadership positions through high school and my undergrad. Just saw the value in wanting to give back to the profession and work with students and create new musicians in the field. And so that kind of stuck. And then I was fortunate to get a job right away in teaching out of undergrad at the high school in Sterling Heights, and taught there for 6 years, and then moved over to L'Anse Creuse North, which was my alma mater, and taught there for 4 years. And then Olivet opened up wanting to rebuild their program, and mm-hmm. had done that in my career with Sterling Heights, having to rebuild that one and then trying to add structure to L'Anse Creuse North and move that one forward again in their competitive levels. And so that brought me over here, and college was always kind of a outlook for me. I always wanted to really end up being a conductor, mm-hmm. and with ensembles, and especially having a way to give back to my colleagues. We're in the classroom every day doing the thing, and
yeah.
Those resources are really important in how we can help our students and other directors. So it worked out really well, and ended up here and now doing various things there, picking up the concert band with Warren, mm-hmm. being the music director there. And I've been there, 10 years now. And, it's great to work with professional musicians and, being able to give back to the community, offer things more to our students in that regard, and just being able to perform all the time.
Right. Yeah. That's the most exciting aspect about being a musician. When you say to people and you're like, well, what do you do for work? Because that's when you first meet someone, that's the first 3 questions that they ask, where are you from? What do you do for work? What do you do for a living, or whatever? What do you do? And to be able to say that, oh, I'm a professional musician, I'm a conductor. That's such an awesome, oh, really? That's so cool. That's awesome to hear. So I should note too, for our listeners. So I mean, beyond you just doing, conducting and being kind of a band organizer and doing these things, but you're also heavily involved in the admissions process and recruiting as well. I know when I first actually kind of transferred into Olivet, you were really, really helpful in helping me transition and dealing with me and saying these are the classes that you need to take. So as far as like your role in that, you obviously get some enjoyment out of that, because I know you travel quite a lot of schools too in the Michigan area, trying to recruit, get people interested in the program and stuff like that as well.
Yeah, and it's unique. Those two things really do go hand in hand. When we take a step back and think about ourselves and our roles as a musician, we're constantly giving back to the community and giving back to society. And part of our job, I mean, whether it's working for the college or teaching high school band or middle school band or elementary music, the other hat we wear is that recruitment hat, right? Because we want more people involved in the art, and we want more people to do what we do. So, the joy of being at a collegiate level is the freedom and flexibility to be able to go visit programs and students, and get on the road and offer an extra set of ears. And especially when bands are getting ready for festivals or ready for their spring concerts and things like that, it's valuable to have that extra set of ears just to come in and say, yep, this is great, and think about this and take it to that next level. And then additionally for us is, hey, we've got a place for you after high school, right? I think one of my big passions, and I talk a lot with students and have given sessions on the fact that, you need to keep in the art, and you need to keep playing your instrument or singing and involving yourself in these ensembles and these musical outlets, because it is something that stays with us forever. And it is it's a part of what makes us human. I mean, we talk about other organizations and such. When you look at life on the planet, one of the things that really makes us distinct as human beings is art.
Yeah.
There's not another creature out there that creates music or creates visual art, right? They use song and sound as communication, but it's not an art form. And we're able to do that, and that's one thing that makes us better people, I think, as a race. And I think that it's something that keeps us whole. And if you look at the Warren Concert Band is a bunch of adults. Some are professional musicians, some are retired teachers, some are scientists and doctors, and our tuba player is 92 years old.
Wow.
And he plays tuba. He carries the thing to every rehearsal, and he belts the heck out of it. So it's great. And when you think about, I played football, I played soccer, I all those things. Nothing against those athletics, but you're not doing that at 92, right? And music, we're still doing that, and our brain is still being engaged, and we're still running with that. So anytime that we can offer that, and being at a collegiate level, to be able to draw students and people into that experience, whether it's what they're going to do with the rest of their lives as a right, or it's something you're going to do as the rest of their lives as an art, right? I think that there's value in both ends of that, and how cool is it that I can be in a position to bring those two elements together and get people involved.
Right. And I'd like to piggyback off on that, to note too, is I know it's a little bit trite, but you hear this all the time where, especially like me in my younger days of being a musician and stages of my life, is I'll be out playing or something, or, doing something, and somebody will say, I used to play X instrument when I was your age, and boy, I wish I would have stuck with it. And it's cliche because you hear that all the time, right? But then my response is always like, well, it's never a better time to start picking it back up again, especially now.
Right. Yeah. And there's so many outlets. I think that people forget that there are places for them to go. There are a lot of community bands and orchestras and church choirs and community choruses throughout the country, but Michigan is loaded with them. You just got to know your community and find where they are, right? And everyone's going to be at a different level. Sometimes you're at max capacity, sometimes there's an audition, but there's also like New Horizons groups that are dedicated to people learning an instrument or picking it back up, and so there are a lot of outlets, and places like colleges and especially community colleges and some universities, there may be an avenue for you to say, yeah, I play this instrument and I'd like to come play. And, you have that ability. I mean, at Olivet, as you know, being small and in a rural area, we've opened up, and part of the initial growth definitely was calling back some of the alumni or some of the community members. Say, hey, you play trumpet, why don't you join us?
Right.
And so there was that town and gown type of atmosphere where we had students mixed in with community members, and what a great thing.
Right.
And it allows people to pick that back up, and it also provides a little bit of mentorship for the students too, for somebody that's been playing for a while. So that you just got to look for it. But my big message to a lot of people is just, it's out there, and
Right.
you can still find outlets.
Right. Well, and it's cool about that too is like, I think there's this common misconception, like, you have to be considered a professional or whatever you consider a professional musician to be a part of these groups. And that's obviously not the case. I mean, you can be, somebody who just is a hobbyist who just really, really enjoys it, and you can still be a part of these bands and these groups. I mean, I know that's obviously very evident for my church, even though we haven't been having mass, but a lot of those people in the choirs and the people that play, they're a bunch of community members that, they've been playing music or singing since they were, little girls and boys. And then they just, decided to continue to do it because they just enjoyed it so much.
Yep.
And it's nice when you hear those stories though, because again, when you hear those stories where people say, I wish I would have stuck with it. And then you see those people that did. And it's just like, that's just so cool that you still do that, and just like you mentioned, like with the sports, you can't obviously play football at 92, it's just physically, we're just not capable of doing those things,
Right.
But this transitions me into kind of a topic based on just how we're being more connected by the internet. And I know yesterday Olivet had their Giving Tuesday concert series, which was a lot of fun. That was super, super cool. Do you see with this way that the world kind of is going right now, with everything being online and the social distancing, that we're going to utilize those types of services to try to do more music and try to reach people and do these live streams and things like that?
I think there's certainly an opportunity, right? But it also comes with a lot of great challenges.
Right.
One of the aspects with the Olivet setup that we used, and the discussion that was had prior to that too, was that in a solo atmosphere it works, and we're able to, there's still a little bit of, we have to make sure we got the right quality of sound and those sorts of things. And we see a lot of these productions going out, whether it's via Zoom or a cappella, or there's a lot of software that's now being refined and or being brought back to the surface to utilize. But the caution there is the work that goes behind the scenes on that is insurmountable, right? And to build a click track and then get it to each individual and then put those together and then try to blend it right in time. There's some other elements to that and aspects that cause some concern or hurdle, if you will. But it's definitely a source that can help, and it allows us to get ourselves out there as artists and musicians, and so we try to utilize that. I think that from the short term, one of the unique things this spring was nobody saw this coming,
Right.
and then all of a sudden we all went, hey, everything's online, go. And we all, great, there's no precedent, there's no book, none of this was covered, right? So trying to use everybody's strengths in these fields and putting these things together. So I think that the opportunity is there for some of these software platforms to develop and help us move that to an easier platform. Mm-hmm. And we can find unique ways to connect that way. But I think that the other hard part for all of us is that performance level, right? And what we do as musicians and artists is it's so much about that bond. It's so much about that connection, right? Not only with each other on stage or in a rehearsal hall, but with the audience, right? And when I direct bands, I talk a lot about the various lines that we create. So influential ensemble is able to blur that line between conductor and band, and so that communication is very fluid. And that's how we were able to create the most musical moment as an ensemble, right? And then our job together, once that line becomes fluid, we have to now make that line between us and the audience fluid so that we engage them in that creation process, right? And that's what's so magical about going to concerts. You know, whether it's the Detroit Symphony or whether it's Aerosmith, the connection from stage and musician to the audience, you know, and think about when you're in an audience, think about the people that you're sitting around in that audience. You're sharing those moments, and you may not even know any of the people around you, right? But that's part of that element, and that makes that concert going so important. And so, as much as we may have an opportunity to use this technology, and certainly some of these hurdles, some are going to be better at jumping them than others, given resources that we all have, but we're never going to be able to replicate that true experience. And so I think that's kind of where we want to create and offer that, but at the same time, we have to be careful because it's not really what we do. Right. Yeah. And in that same vein, I think that we're all struggling because as an artist, think about it. Anytime that there is a traumatic experience or, something of significance that's going to cause trauma and or grief, which this covers both. One of the frustrations on our end as musicians, it hits us too, right? And you can go back even looking at 9/11. If you look at any of the war times that we've been involved in, it's taken time for musicians and artists to create something to start the healing process, right? It's never an instant thing because unfortunately when those things happen, we get stymied as well, right? And it affects us because we're also grieving and we're trying to do that. And at the same time, we have a responsibility as an artist to heal the community, right? That's part of what we do through our performance and through our creation. So we're kind of, I think it gets exponentially more difficult for us because we're trying to do that and utilize the resources we have to do that. And at the same time, know that that's not really how this works. And so, just trying to balance those ideas, I think, certainly become a challenge. But as far as the technology and things, I think there's some great things out there, and I think that we're going to see some of it get utilized.
Sure, yeah.
But it's definitely not going to replace what we really do.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
I don't think there's, I mean, you can obviously get as close as you can and you can, try your best, but yeah, I don't think there'll ever be a way to, replace that in-person feeling of witnessing a concert like that, or whatever kind of creative space it may be. Because I was thinking like this the other day, just like plays and theater and acting in that regard too. But on a positive aspect about that though is when we did those concerts for Giving Tuesday, I was so happy with the amount of people that were interacting. Yep. That so I mean that's something that I was thinking about too. It's like at a normal circumstance, if you're at a concert, you got to be quiet, right? Shh, don't say anything. Clap when it's all over, right? Wait until the final bow, right? And then that's kind of just etiquette, right? And so it's interesting to see when you have a concert on live stream like that, where you're playing or whatever, you're singing, and you can see all the comments going across the screen in real time, and you're like, oh, so-and-so, Mary Jo, they liked what I did there, or, Bobby Smith, or, whatever. But it is really cool and interesting in that regard. But again, it was just so cool to see all of these people that, some of these alumni from Olivet that, I have no idea who they are. And then you click on their profile and they're like, okay, yeah, they're an old alumni and they're still supporting, right. Even years later, Yeah. And that's just an awesome experience about the Olivet community, and the fact that once you graduate from Olivet, you're never done with Olivet. You're still always connected to that community. And we say that Olivet is a small community, but really, I mean, it's a large community of people that really do care about everybody involved that went to that school. And it's like, you say, oh, you went to Olivet? Oh, I know Olivet. So and so I went to Olivet, and it's just cool to say that. Even years down the line, these people are still really connected and invested in the school that they went to.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think along that same line, Justin, you bring up a great point in that I think that's one of the opportunities that this technology is going to afford us moving forward, right? Mm-hmm. I think that a lot of things out of what we're doing now is allowing us to open our minds as well and try to focus us on, okay, this isn't really how we do this, so we're being careful, but it's another way for us to engage with that alumni crew and with our community and even new members, right? And just if it is an individual base from time to time, but it's certainly a new way for us to reach out and find a new audience or re-engage with an old audience, and I think that those opportunities we're going to see develop coming out of this, right? We may not see concerts on a cappella like we're seeing right now, but I think that I think that this truly opens us all up to a new opportunity of engagement.
Yeah. And you think too is like, because we live in such a more connected world, if you can say that this happened in a good time, it's better that this whole virus happened in the year of connectedness with technology. Because I was talking to my folks about this the other day. I was like, imagine if this was something that happened in the 80s when, computers and stuff were not the way that they are now, obviously. And they're like, you're right. It is amazing that we do have this, if you want to call it a luxury, to be connected in this regard, because, other than, having computers, we would not be able to do some of the things that, I guess I could do it over my phone. I'm going to play for you what I'm playing over my phone or whatever. But again, it wouldn't be the same, being able to see visually, what's being performed. Because, I think that's also part of the organic experience. It's like, I'm seeing what his fingers are doing. Oh, okay. Could see his, his vocal cords, he's hitting that high note or whatever, so as much as it is the audible sense of it, it's also the visual appeal as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Heck, it wasn't that long ago. I mean, when I started my undergrad at Wayne State, I had a Nokia cell phone. I mean, that was what we had, and, all communications with the department were still being sent to me. I have letters in my file that were written on a typewriter, so I mean, that's the end of the transition there, but you start getting that, and email was a new thing, and it was very clunky.
Right.
So yeah, it's amazing. If this would have happened even 15 years ago, we'd have been in a very different world.
Yeah, very different situation. Okay, so this leads me into, I know with your students, you're probably saying, you should practice on this, you should practice on this, make sure you're doing all your scales, right? So as far as like, musicians or students now, because we have, this really is a gift in terms of all this extra time that we have to utilize to practice. I know as a musician, sometimes you're like, oh my God, I'm a musician and I'm going to music school. And where's my time to practice? I have to focus on music theory, music history, and all this other stuff. So what would be like your guidance for, maybe some of those students of yours, or, just students in general that are, practicing, and, how should they best try to utilize their time and, make it the most of what they have?
Yeah, this is something I've been grappling with myself. I mean, at even the professional level, we're losing it, right? So, well, I think part of the difficulty is when you are in quarantine, we're isolated in one spot, and you can get all the research and articles too, but truly, I think the best thing we can all do is find your routine and stick to it.
Yeah.
And as a musician, especially, it's really easy to be like, I'm going to sleep in and I'm not going to worry about it, because where am I going, know? And it's really easy. And as students, this because you're always balancing so much, especially as a music student, right? As you mentioned, there's a lot, and so it's easy to be like, oh, I'll do that later tonight, or I'll wake up early tomorrow and I'm going to hit that first, right? And the hard part is we do that to so many things that you start to lose it.
Right.
And that doesn't happen that way. So something else pops up, or you're exhausted all of a sudden, and we're just going to wait. So it's all about routine and keeping the routine. So I tend to study scores in the morning before my day starts. I can have a cup of coffee. I can go through score and plan my day. Mm-hmm. And so I try really hard right now to make sure that I still do that, and right now is a transition of we're starting a program for next year and next season and all those. So there's a lot of score reading that's happening now. And I just try to make sure that every day that time that I always had, that I make sure I still do it. And it can be a little fraught right now because, as a conductor anyway, I mean, there's a bunch of scores I studied that I now don't get to perform. Right. Yeah. And so you can get in your own way of saying, well, I'm going to do all the studying, and then am I going to actually get to do something with this in the end? And we got to remember that as musicians, that's still our fundamental, right? And so reading the score for the whole suite is going to prepare me to, to do the Granger Shepherd's Hay later, and so those skills are still there, that analysis is still there. It opens our mind. And as an instrumentalist, I mean, one thing I've done with my free time is I started making reeds again. I'm picking up the bassoon again because I haven't been able to do that in a structured way. So, and then you just start going, because your scales, if you can keep them under mastery and keep going through those etudes, right? Then when you do pick up a concerto next, you're ready to go, right. Because the fundamentals aren't getting lost. And all those old cliches of 1 day missed practice is 3 days missed, and all those sorts of things, it's still relevant. The hard part for us is always, where's the next outlet, right? Typically we're ingrained in practicing because the next concert is 6 weeks away, our next gig is 3 days, our next thing is whatever. And right now we don't have that structure. And this is where it gets important as a musician in that discipline is, well, but one day there's going to be, right? And I would, through experiences, especially for those that are looking to be professional musicians and students who are majors, who are studying for that aspect, keep on it now, especially because when things start to lift, we're going to be the first ones called, right? There's going to be a ceremony. There's going to be a gathering. There's going to be a celebration. There's going to be a whatever. And social distancing, all these things, all those parameters. But think about what our life is. And anytime there's any point of significance, there's music, right? And our society right now is going to be craving that. And what, how many weddings have been postponed?
Yeah.
Right. And so when they're able to have it, they want that quartet. I want a quartet as I walk down the aisle, right? Or whatever the ceremony or situation may be. And so I think that we have to then be ready, be prepared, because right now may feel like downtime and, oh my gosh, what's next? But man, when the gate opens, the flood's going to happen, and the beauty of it is that we're going to get those calls, and are you going to be ready for them or not? And so a lot of that forward thinking, right? Yeah. Look further down the road and always be prepared for what's next. One thing that this thing I think has taught all of us is we have to be prepared for the down too. Okay, now what? And there's a lot of contingencies being written down that we never thought we'd ever have to come up with, but we're coming up with them, and that'll help us in the future. But at the other hand of that, as musicians and artists especially, we always have to kind of stay on the positive end of things, because there's always light and we're going to get to the end of it. So, as far as practice, just be disciplined, set up your time. If it's 8 a.m., if it's 11 p.m., whatever, make sure that you stick to that no matter what, just like you would on a normal day.
Right. Yeah, that's a fantastic point. As far as like, I'm really hoping that kind of boosts the music economy. I've thought about that a little bit, but not in depth. Is that as far as like, all these events are being canceled. Especially going into the summer season. Weddings and, those types of different ceremonies are obviously really, really huge in the warmer months, especially here in the Midwest area in Michigan. So, that's a really, really good point. I'm really, hopeful that, once we kind of get these, flags kind of lifted off and say, okay, you can do these, you can have these events, then, musicians are just going to get hired and, be able to kind of, get back into that limelight of like, oh yeah, I'm back. And, so it is a good point to really utilize your time and not use it as a vacation, and utilize your time the best to, become better at, technique or scales or, especially like with music schools, as I kind of talked a little bit, there's like pieces that I wanted to get to that we just didn't have the time, because you have so many, you got to get through so much in an undergrad program in 4 years of time. So it's like, now that, I've kind of had the direction on where I can, really set my practice time. It's like, oh, there's a composer I've never played before that I really like their music. And now I can actually have the opportunity to work on it, which is a really, really awesome aspect of this. If you want to take a positive, out of this whole situation.
Also the behind it. I'm finding that where I have a little bit more time now to dive even deeper.
Right.
And than I normally do,
Right.
But I want to read this book on Percy Granger today. So great, do that. So that helps bolster, I think, the want and pique the interest as you dive into some of those things, for sure.
Right. So I wanted to jumping back a little bit here. I kind of forgot about this, but I want to talk about. So you obviously do a lot of different events with students that are beyond just solely in the Olivet community. I know you've taken students into a lot of different cool places, and I know you've done I think you just went to Rome not that long ago, right? So I want you to talk about some of those experiences, because I think one of the cool things about being a music student is being able to play in multiple different venues and say, okay, well, I'm living in Olivet, I'm going to school for music here, but there's more opportunities than just performing solely in that community. So I want you to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I think it comes back to just being able to, where can we share our music? Who are we going to engage with next?
Mm-hmm.
And who are we going to invite into this craft, right? And into this art that may not have thought about it originally. I'm also a firm believer in, you've got to get out into other communities, and you have to expose yourself to other styles and other genres, different cultures. This trip to Rome was an invite situation. It's our second international trip. We went to Paris 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And performing in some of the most prestigious places you can, and this particular event is a New Year's event, and it's an outdoor parade through the center of Rome. I mean, the city shuts down the main square and the corridor around it and says, we're going to do this parade thing, right? And for students at Olivet, we performed in front of over 500,000 people.
Wow.
In that parade. We're not going to fit anywhere near that in Olivet on our best day, right? So it's just a matter of that exposure and a crowd that's very engaging. And think about a place like Rome is the birthplace to so many arts and styles and musical things that we value now as just a fundamental,
Right.
And so what an experience that is, and being able to share that, performing concerts in the Santa Maria de Miracoli in Rome, or previously in Paris, we played in the American Cathedral. The parade in Paris was down the Champs-Élysées. Thinking about some of the history, the Parisian band marched down the same street that Napoleon marched on, the same route, and so to be able to look at that kind of historic value on top of the performance value, and then being able to engage with those outside cultures that are different, and that gives us a very new perspective and an open-mindedness to how we approach the world around us. And by doing that dictates to us a little bit of how we create music then, because now I have a very different perspective of what this means, right? And we can bring that around. The parade we had in Frascati in Rome, which is just a small village outside, was like a street festival. And we got into one of the little squares that we were, and this little boy come running up to us. It was marching next to the drum line and being very engaged. And the drum major and I pulled him up, and I put the drum major's hat on the kid, and he conducted the fight song with us,
Wow.
And he didn't speak any English. He had no idea what I was saying, but he had a grin from ear to ear and just was on his high horse there. It just was so cool.
Yeah.
And we have a few pictures of just him looking back at us with his hat on, and it's like the recruitment picture, right?
Wow.
Because that student or that person now has been involved in a marching band, and in a musical environment that he was allowed to be a part of. And I'm hoping, he now enters that and becomes a musician or takes a music class, because he now knows the energy there, right? He didn't know what he was doing, but he was mirroring us conducting. He was mirroring the marching of the band, and was totally engaged and just running back and forth and in and out. And his parents were in tears when we took pictures and put the hat on him, and all those sorts of things. So I think that particular moment definitely demonstrates to us the impact of travel, not just internationally. I mean, we can do the same thing here, right? But we want to offer that to our musicians, and we certainly want to share what we do beyond our own community.
All right. Yeah, I didn't know that. That's awesome. That's a really special moment, because I think, especially when you see like really, really young people that are so moved and touched by arts, And that's just like, yeah, that kid right there, that type of experience like that is probably somebody that at one point in his life as he gets older is going to probably, be involved in arts in some capacity. And, that's like when you see young people kind of thrive in that. And that's a really special moment because it's like for you probably as well, because you've worked with like lots of students. It's like you're leading the next generation of musicians and art and artistic people, which has got to be a really, really special thing for you to be as an educator and a professor. You're like passing on your wisdom and knowledge and saying, yeah, I'm making, musicians out of these men and women to lead, the next, generation of music, which is really cool.
Yeah, it's a huge point of pride as a director and teacher. And like I said, whether they're going to be a professional musician or whether they're just going to continue that art, right? They're going to do great things in the world because of those experiences. And travel and or literature that we choose and the experiences we share together are all part of what help build that, right? And from a perspective of a director and teacher, what I enjoy the most, I mean, when we engage with that audience and we get those kids involved, it's such a huge takeaway. And one of the biggest things for me is to watch my students take that in, right? To watch the band round the corner and face the span of steps and realize that at the time we didn't know, but to realize that there are 560,000 people standing in front of us. It gives you chills when you're expecting it. To turn around then, and I always make sure that I turn that corner too. We were only told there was going to be maybe 200,000 people there, which is still a big number, right?
Yeah,
but,
right.
Okay, and you turn that corner and realize, this is a lot more people, right? And look at how engaged they are. And then immediately for me, I love to just turn around and look at my students, because even as they're playing, you can see them all of a sudden stand taller, play bigger, and you can just see that pride on their face and that awe, right? And just all of that taking in. Right. And to me, those are the moments I always look for when I'm engaging with the ensembles and the students, is how are you taking in the moment, right? As we're creating it, how are we absorbing it? And I know that those are memories that stick with you for life. And as a musician, those are things that impact us. So the next time I play something by that composer or play that particular piece, I'm going to have a new element to add to my musicianship because of that experience. Right. And then that gets shared with that particular audience or those listeners that now impacts how they're moving through their everyday life. Right. How powerful is that?
Right. Wow. Just getting goosebumps just talking about it. Yeah, that if I could say one of my favorite aspects about going to Olivet was the fact that there are so many opportunities that you can really create for yourself, even as like a musician. I know that, there's like different avenues where, if you say to a faculty member, hey, would you be interested in having music at this event? Or, like there's a little cafe on campus. Would you be interested in having me come in for an hour and play on this Thursday afternoon? And that's the coolest aspect about the music faculty, or just the faculty in general at Olivet, is they're more than willing to help you succeed in your dreams and your goals while you're going to school there. And I know I wanted to mention this. When I was still at Olivet, we had our first ever suicide prevention walk, out of the darkness walk. And I remember we had a group of guys, and I came up to Mr. Duby and I said, would you be interested in having music at this event? And that was just an opportunity where it's like, we had never even thought about that. And it was a really cool experience. And I think it was rainy that day, so we had to move it inside a little bit. But other than that, it went really well, and it was a really, really awesome opportunity. So I just wanted to note that, like the faculty at Olivet are just so more than willing to help you succeed in, creating your own, things that you want to do, whether it's music or art or, doing different showcases on different things. And that's what's really nice about going to a smaller college, is you have those opportunities that you may not get so much at a larger institution.
Right. Well, and just to add to that, that's the power of our students as well, right? I mean, it's definitely reciprocal. And being able to create that atmosphere. So I mean, that walk came out of an idea from Abigail Smith that just said we need to do this. And as we were developing, we didn't know what it was going to look like either. Mm-hmm. And so as that was developing, you came in and said, "Do you want music for it?" Yes, check, go. let's make that happen, and let's engage as many students as we can, and involve as much of the community as we can, right? And, to add to that, just because we just had a recap on that just recently, even, this has been our third year hosting that event.
Yeah.
We've raised over $30,000 over the past 3 years for that, surpassing our goal each year. And since then, we now have mental health resources on campus,
Wow.
and all of that was student driven.
Yeah.
And a little bit of crazy end on me to go, yep, let's do it, and there you go. But that is the power of our faculty and our student body, that we're able to work together to make those dreams happen and make those impacts on campus.
That's really awesome. Well, Mr. Duby, I just have one more question in closing here. This has been great. I love doing these podcasts because I talk to a lot of different musicians and teachers and composers and all these different people, and they always give me a newfound perspective, something that I would never have obtained of just being a guitar player. And if I could encourage anybody that may be listening that's a musician or in the creative space, obtain that knowledge by talking to people and getting that perspective, because I think, you can be the greatest musician out there and you can be, so talented in your study. But if you don't talk to people and you don't gain experiences or knowledge from outside people, you're really doing yourself a disjustice because you're not obtaining that perspective. So I just wanted to note that. But my final question in closing is, what would be some advice or words of wisdom and guidance? I know you gave a lot already, but, for anybody who's listening who, I know this is troubling times for a lot of people, not just, student bodies, but obviously all kinds of generations of people. What would be, some lasting words of wisdom for those people that, are trying to, grasp that light in, this time of dark?
Sure. Justin, I just want to piggyback, even to start that conversation, is the importance of talking to others. And now, I'm in my house and talking to walls. So it's interesting, and you got to remember that, especially now with this technology, we have the ability to reach out, and maybe even right now, reach out to people that we may never have had contact with before these times.
Sure,
right?
Yeah.
The amount of professionals out there that are making themselves available to the public and to the profession is amazing, and how attainable it really is right now. And know that even the professors and even the professionals are talking to each other and talking to everybody. These certainly are unprecedented times. I'm in about twice a week, I'm talking to band directors from across the country in various stages, because we're all going, well, what are you doing? You think, because it is a collective mind that's going to help us get through, and you want to know and find out that we're all in this. We really are all in this together, and everybody is experiencing the same stuff, And so I might have a different idea on how to get out of it than the person I talk to later, but we're all thinking about the same thing, and we're all aiming toward the end. So I think that the most important thing for us right now is to know that, as cliche as it sounds, one of my favorite lines is, "This too shall pass." We're figuring it out. It's going to take time. It's important for us to be mindful of those around us, and as upsetting or inconvenient as things may get, keep remembering the bigger purpose and why we're doing the things that we're doing, because we don't want to fall back into this, right? So, but there's a lot of great things out there, and we have to take the opportunity and build upon the energy that we have, right? And especially as musicians and artists, utilize that.
Right.
We can use our own practice time as an escape, and we can find resources online and YouTube, and some of these things that are coming out now. There are great performances out there that are now available.
Yeah.
The Detroit Symphony is doing live streams every week. Berlin Philharmonic, most of the big ones, but the Berlin Philharmonic has made their website and access free. And so there's a lot of resource out there for inspiration and for creativity. But the big thing for us, we've got to stay on the positive, right? And as musicians, we can draw from everything that's going around us, no matter how ugly it is. But we need to use that energy to draw us forward and create something that's going to make that output and provide the light for us and those listening, and just continue to work together. We have a great bond as musicians and artists and people.
Right.
And just because I can't see, I mean, I miss my students walking by my office door. I miss walking down the hall and just, firing a joke back and forth, or just saying a hello or a high five or whatever it is that we do.
Right.
But we can still do some of those things like we're doing now, right? A quick Zoom call, a quick together, a quick viewing party, whatever it is. Remember to keep engaging with your fellow peers and your friends, and keep creating. But we will get through this. There's a light. We're coming to it. And I try to look at anytime we have a point of adversity or challenge, what do we learn from it, right? It's thrown in front of us, and I'm not going to dwell on why or how, but I'm going to try to find, what did this make me do better, right? Or what did this make me realize? And if we try to take that approach, then I think we can get through it, right? As we talked about today, there's going to be a whole new use of technology as we move forward that we're going to be able to incorporate in our craft, that I don't think any of us would have been really that open to had we not been forced to, and so let's look at how we can utilize that and where we can take it, right? And most importantly, like, as much as it's important to stay informed, quit watching the news.
Yeah, especially right now, it's all negative.
It's easy to get sucked in. Yeah. And then you can start dwelling on all the negative that's out there. We can always find negative. It's the easiest thing to find.
Yeah.
Right? And in times like this, we just got to focus on what's next. What's the positive outcome? Things are going to be different when this all passes, but not as much as people are trying to make it sound. We're still going to have concerts. We're still going to have get-togethers. We're still going to be able to do those things. It's going to take time to get back into full swing. But I don't think that we're going to see any change there. So keep your chins up. Keep looking forward, and keep making music, because that's what's going to save us all.
Right. Well, everybody, I would like to thank Mr. Jeremy Duby for being on the Just Music podcast. Mr. Duby, this has been a really, really big joy for me. This has been a lot of fun, and I've gained a lot of perspective again, as I said earlier, that I would never have obtained if it wasn't for just really talking to, different faculty that I kind of studied under that, have knowledge about these types of things. And so I've really enjoyed this. So thanks again for being so willing to come on the podcast. Yeah,
thanks for having me. This was a lot of fun and great perspective for me too. It's great to talk about these things and let everybody else know.
Right. All righty, Mr. Duby. Take care now.
Thanks, you too.
All right, guys, that was the podcast. I hope you really enjoyed it. If this is the first time that you ever seen my podcast, make sure to check out the playlist. I have all kinds of other episodes on the Just Music podcast that I'm sure you'll really like as well. So I'll see you in the next podcast, and make sure that you check those out. Take care.